Hey folks, Real Honesty with John Ritland. I'm John Ritland. It's another Rapid Fire Editions. This is me doing worst wrestling announcers, and I did this back in 2015, and I can always share the playlist with you if you would like. I think it actually was called Worst in Wrestling, and I talked about some aspects of stuff that I didn't particularly care for, and including those were worst wrestling announcers. And I also did worst ring attire, or I did a whole bunch of stuff, which I had fun with. But anyway, I talked about a lot of really, really bad announcers, and now I'm just going to go through some that are on this list, and just briefly talk about why I didn't like them. Some of these are going to be lengthier rants than others. Some are just simply going to be me mentioning and passing through. Because honestly, there are some that I didn't like, but I didn't necessarily hate. I'm not going to put David Otunga on here because as bland as the guy is, whatever. I a lot of times forget he's even there, honestly. And a lot of the points he makes are pretty shitty. But one person I will put on here is Rob Bartlett. Those of you that don't know, if you're too young to remember, or if you didn't watch Raw back when it first started, he was somebody that replaced Bobby Heenan, and I guess he was a comedian of some variety or whatever. Whatever he was horribly unfunny. He was unfunny as himself. He was unfunny impersonating Elvis. And thankfully, he didn't last very long. Rob Bartlett was just garbage. Shout out to Zach Donegan, because I know that you agree with this. Steve Mongo McMichael. Mongo was a terrible wrestler. He was a terrible announcer. He was one of the worst color commentators, announcers, whatever, comic relief guys that they ever had in announcing. Ever. I mean, in WWE, WCW, he wasn't the worst in WCW. I have a couple that are actually worse, including one fat, disgusting fuck that I will get to later. It's Mark Madden. But yeah, Mongo was just bad. Mongo making fun of Bobby Heenan, I mean, Mongo always seemed like he maybe enjoyed what he was doing, he just wasn't very good at it. And I never understood how he stayed in the wrestling business as long as he did. And then if you saw him, I believe Bound for Glory 2000, I want to say 2008, he looked like he had been through hell, like he gained a ton of weight. I don't know if he had personal issues or whatever. But just going back to his announcing gig, my God, he was terrible. He was just so bad. It's like, he seemed to respect the wrestlers. I mean, I'll give him that much. He just wasn't good at his job at all. And then, so yeah, just Mongo was just terrible, absolutely terrible. And then Mike Adamle. Mike Adamle, apparently reports have come out that he may be suffering from CTE, head injuries incurred and everything, so that might explain why his announcing wasn't very good, but Jeff Harvey's always going to stick with him. He just was somebody that they brought in and just wasn't a good idea because he just wasn't very good. He never struck me as horrible, and he seemed to not rub people the wrong way, but Mike Adamle was just really, really, really bad on commentary. Taz and Aces and Eights. In particular because Taz was a good heel, but when he did it to the detriment of the company that he was going with, or the company he was part of, it just wasn't very good. There was nothing wrong with him being a heel. Like, even when he was a heel in ECW, WWE's ECW, he was fine because at least he would still get praise to some people. It didn't work otherwise, and it did not work in Aces and Eights, which was a group that did not work at all. Mainly because I had guys like Wes Briscoe in it. Wes Briscoe, who cannot wrestle for shit. And make sure to say that on Twitter. Say it about Wes Briscoe, because then Joe Briscoe will go and block you because he's an old man that has nothing better to do. Even though I actually think that it's somebody else running the Joe Briscoe account, I don't know if it's actually him. But anyway, yeah, Taz, Aces and Eights, never cared for him. Heel Michael Cole. Cole always rubbed me the wrong way because I just never cared for how he announced stuff. He was overproduced, whether he was overproduced or whether he just wasn't that great, I don't know. He was fine on SmackDown for a few years, especially when they decided to do the brand split stuff. But yeah, especially once he got to his heel run, it got to the point where I was muting it. I was muting it or actively tweeting saying this is some of the worst garbage ever. I actually ended up coming back to Twitter in November of 2011, so I actually missed most of his heel run, but I do remember posting on Facebook a lot. Because, believe it or not, there was a time when I didn't use Twitter much. And I just remember just hating Michael Cole. I mean, you're supposed to hate a heel anyway, but you're not supposed to hate it to where the company makes you want to turn your TV off. That's really what it was. It was to the point where he was just blowing every damn heel, especially Miz. It was just sad. And to be fair, Cole embraced the whole thing. He embraced the fact that a lot of fans didn't like him. There are people that tell him to kill himself, and I want to make this very clear. None of these guys on here, as much as I hate them, do I want them to die, or do I want them to get diseases or stuff like that. I may not care for how they did their jobs, but I'm not going to wish that kind of stuff on them. At least on these guys in particular. Other ones, that's another story. And I got my own list of people for that. But heel Michael Cole just... I respect the fact that he stayed in the business as long as he has, but he has never been more than average overall at his job on commentary. The fact that he's the voice of a generation of WWE viewers and viewers and everything, that's ridiculous. Because Cole couldn't even compare to JR at 50%. But Cole's a different type of announcer. Kevin Kelly, to me, was better. But no, they wanted to go with Michael Cole. I think Kevin Kelly would have been a better choice, but he did fine in Ring of Honor. I think is still doing fine in Ring of Honor. I'm not really sure, but I know Kevin Kelly was doing commentary and doing quite well. But anyway, I never cared for heel Cole. Ed Ferrara. You know what, actually, I'm going to talk about Ed Ferrara in a second. I'm going to talk about Jerry Lawler, and this is Jerry Lawler mostly in the PG era and on, because once he turned to a babyface, it got ridiculous. Lawler was a good commentator and a great heel commentator, especially when he had his feud with Bret Hart and that kind of stuff and everything. But once he became a babyface, it got to be really lame jokes, and it was age and stuff like that and everything. And then he did have his heart attack, and I'm glad he's okay. But just his commentary since then has just not been that good. He just is not, to me, that interesting, and I haven't cared for later Jerry Lawler. Earlier Jerry Lawler I cared for, but this is mainly about later Jerry Lawler. Where maybe it's time for him to retire, for good. I mean, I know that he's making occasional appearances with WWE. I guess they have him on a new contract per, few appearances. But don't bring him back to commentary. Just don't. You want to have him on panels and stuff like that, fine. Now we're going to get to people like Ed Ferrara. Ed Ferrara, the main reason Ed Ferrara's on here is because of that Oklahoma impression where he made fun of JR. Now, I don't know if it was Ed's idea. I don't know if it was AOL Time Warner that came up with the idea. I don't know who came up with the idea and told him to do it. I'm going to blame Ed for doing it, though. And here's why. Because, yeah, you're casting a role, you're told to do stuff. It was mean-spirited. If he actually gave a damn, Ed Ferrara had a goddamn heart, he would have said, no, I'm not going to do that. But whether JR was the easiest guy to deal with or not, Ed Ferrara decided to be a fat, disgusting slob, make fun of a man's health, where, Ed, I sure as hell hope you never have any conditions like that, because God forbid if you do, then you would be having karma come back at you and people making fun of you for it, and I don't think you'd like that very much. So Ed Ferrara, you piece of shit, I'm glad that you're out of the wrestling business, because you never deserved to be in there. You never did. Especially for doing something like that and slapping somebody in the face for making fun of their medical abilities or medical disabilities. If you didn't like JR as a person, fine. If whoever did the whole thing didn't like JR as a person, fine. But don't go to that level, because it just makes you look bad, and that's one of the worst things ever. No wonder JR was hurt by it. I was hurt by it, and I never had the conditions that JR had. And thankfully, JR seems to be doing fine despite losing his wife recently. And hopefully JR continues to do well and everything. I'm sure just from how everybody describes his wife, that she's looking down on him from heaven, and he will meet her very soon. But Jim, our thoughts are with you. I know that's kind of weird given that I'm going on a rant here, but Ed Ferrara, I can't stand the guy. He would be on my shit list of people that personally I just don't like. Now that's just based on solely what I know and solely what I've seen on wrestling and in interviews. Few interviews I can stand with Ed Ferrara in them. But Ed Ferrara ain't even close to being the worst. No, JBL, and here's why JBL is on here at the worst, in particular because of what he did to Mauro Ranallo, like where it's pretty much common knowledge now that he was one of the ones that he was the main one that caused Mauro Ranallo to kind of have a massive breakdown of bipolar. Now Mauro is bipolar, and sometimes, you can have a relapse, you can have all this stuff, and you can have real big issues. Like, I have mood swings and stuff like that and everything. I don't have bipolar. I do have my own mental issues. And that's part of the reason why JBL's on here. But also, JBL's just been a bully. And quite frankly, since 2013, when the Authority formed, my God, he's been so insufferable. If somebody were to hit the guy in the head with a brick, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Now, again, I know disease or death or whatever, you don't want to wish that on somebody. But somebody needs to teach JBL a lesson, because apparently he's still bullying people despite doing his whole charity, and doing all the stuff for underprivileged kids. Apparently he feels it's okay to still bully and rib the coworkers, especially those with mental disabilities. Maybe you might not want to do that, Bradshaw, because you're going to possibly get fired. In fact, if JBL got fired from WWE, I wouldn't feel bad for him one bit. But I'm going to now get to Mark Madden. Part of the reason I can't stand Mark Madden is because WCW, by the time Mark Madden got on commentary, was sliding out of control. It didn't matter, and I'm just going to say this much. Whether I was a fan, not a fan of Vince Russo, you could have got Vince Russo, you got a Vince McMahon, you could have got, well, short of Vince McMahon, you could have got everybody. You could have got Vince Russo, you could have got the entire WWE creative to go over there for 6 months, and they wouldn't have been able to fix what happened to WCW, because the AOL Time Warner merger, the people in charge did not want WCW to succeed. But they felt that putting Mark Madden on commentary was a good idea to kind of phase out Bobby Heenan and everything, at least as far as I could tell. The problem is Bobby Heenan, even now when he can't talk, is a better heel commentator than Mark Madden. Mark Madden, the disgusting, fat, worthless fuck that he is, does not even deserve to even call himself somebody that was in the wrestling business. Say, I was in the wrestling business. I was this. You know what? DDP did us a goddamn favor by getting rid of you if he actually got you fired. DDP is a saint. DDP should have gone to the damn WWE Hall of Fame just for that alone, but thankfully he went in for other great things like his career, which you try to shit on. Oh, you shit on Jim Cornette, Mark Madden. Jim Cornette in his tennis racket has more talent than you'll ever have. The thing is no, and of course none of these people are ever going to watch it. Mark Madden probably doesn't even know how to operate YouTube. In fact, because he can't eat it, and that's all he seems to be able to do is eat. Mark Madden's a piece of shit. He's somebody that wants to verbally attack people. He's jumped in on conversations that I've had with people, and other people have had tagging me in, that haven't even tagged him, and he does a name search and then jumps in on stuff. It's like, Mark, if they don't invite you, here's an idea, public forum or not, go off and have some fun, because if everybody that criticizes you is insignificant, then why are you commenting? Just ignore it. Ignore it. I mean, you ignore everything except carbs and food, so why in the world do we matter? Mark Madden's a piece of shit. He made WCW matches unwatchable with some of the best talent out there. He made it some of the worst stuff. I was glad when he got released, because at least Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson, and I'm never the biggest fan of Tony Schiavone, but he had some pretty damn good calls in his career. Him and Scott Hudson were fine. Them calling the final few pay-per-views of WCW's run was some of the best stuff, because at least they seemed to care. Mark Madden never seemed to care. He called me a tool once, I think, because I made a comment about how he's a bad commentator. And he was a bad commentator. And the fact that he only was in the wrestling business for just over a year in that role says a lot. I don't know any other major wrestling company that's brought him in. I don't think WWE ever brought him in. If they did, it would be a horrible idea. Mark Madden, you're a piece of shit, and I don't feel one bit bad for anything that's happened in your life, because you brought it on yourself. Because karma's a rotten bitch. Karma's a rotten bitch, but not as big of a bitch as you are. And finally, Josh Matthews. Josh Matthews is the biggest pile of shit currently on wrestling commentary, and here's why. Here's why. He had the nerve to tweet out something about the Hall of Fame. Oh, old guys or whatever, and, I think end the pain. Well, Josh, maybe you could end the pain by getting off of commentary. TNA, well, Impact Wrestling now, has suffered horribly because of your commentary. I feel bad for Pope. Borash at least has the respect of people. I know that Josh is probably just playing a character, but the fact that he's been healing it up on Twitter for about the past year, the guy blocked me pretty quickly, which I don't really care about because Josh Matthews is a piece of shit. He's blocked friends of mine. He's blocked. Apparently, I guess there are people that he's blocked that he probably has a block list a mile long, almost as long as the amount of douchey sweaters that he has. Josh Matthews is a fucking goddamn tool, and the fact that he thinks that he's the greatest commentator in the world, Josh, good God, man, as Don West was better than you, and I like Don West. Don West was never the greatest commentator, but my God, Don West, Mike Tenay, on their worst day, is better than you could ever be. I would make the argument that Mike Adamle was better than him. Heel Cole was better than him because Cole at least had the respect of some people in the wrestling business. Josh Matthews was a failed tough enough contestant. However, how he even got to where he got to at this point, I have no idea. He's a freaking joke of a person. It's like, and I want to say this much before I finish up on this rant. I don't wish ill on him or his wife. I don't think Josh Matthews should be commentating an Impact. I think he should be doing home shopping stuff or doing some kind of commentary where he's not embarrassing the wrestling business that he claims to know so much about, yet he can't call a simple springboard leg drop, which it's a shame somebody doesn't hit a springboard leg drop on him and knock him out of wrestling. I mean, kayfabe, by the way. I don't wish ill on him. I don't wish ill on his wife. They want to have a happy life, great. I don't know how he landed Madison Rayne because I guess maybe she likes guys with douchey haircuts and douchey vests. Maybe Josh is actually a nice guy, I don't know. But he's come across as a royal prick for a number of years, especially since he left WWE. He's probably still bitter they released him, but they did us all a favor because he was horrible as a backstage announcer. As a wrestler, as a failed wrestler, because that's basically what he is a failure, a backstage announcer, or on commentary. The guy was horrible. Josh Matthews is goddamn rotten. So anyway, that's going to be the end of that. Who are some of your worst announcers? Leave them in the comments. And like, share, subscribe, and, my Twitter handle is in the description. Spend real honesty with John Ritland. I'm John Ritland, and I will see you soon.